Well, good afternoon to everyone, or good evening, as it is where our two speakers are joining us from today. If you are watching this at a different time and in a different location, by all means know that the original recording for this will be posted into the Adobe platform, where you'll be able to access any of the resource materials that are shared. And toward the end of the presentation, we will be bringing over a file share window where you can download some of the provided materials. It will then be generated as a video for our YouTube platform. And at that point, you may be able to enable closed captioning for the hearing impaired, and also translation services for just about wherever you are viewing this presentation today. We do have to say thank you to the water and wastewater equipment treatment and transport folks, the WET show. And I'm going to put their link into the chat window. Let me just clear what we have here and start fresh. They have generously underwritten our Adobe license this year on the basis of the ongoing issue with COVID-19 is making it very difficult for people to travel and to attend professional events. And as you see there from the hashtag, WeareEssential, I think we all agree that water and wastewater are critical towards addressing this global pandemic. Do encourage you to go ahead and visit the WET Show website, and hopefully there will be an event next year, and if so, we look forward to seeing you all in Indianapolis in February 2021. Now, our speakers today are Tommy Lindstrom and Peter Asterberg, and they're going to be talking about the island of Öland and how it had a pretty unique approach to providing enough drinking water and potable water from both desalination and from industrial treatment. And the really interesting thing about this, I think, is that they are by no means alone in this world and having to deal with rapidly changing and wildly fluctuating weather patterns. And you will see from the background image on the screen the little bio that went along with the invite for this. I'll just move this out of the way here. The circle there will show exactly where the island of Öland is. This particular image here was taken, I think a couple of years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tommy or Peter, because at that point you will see the extent of the drought and the lack of snow cover. And that this really does, I think, demonstrate very aptly exactly what the issues that they're going to be talking about are. And at this point, gentlemen, I would like to turn it over to you, and I will bring your presentation over.
Oh, thank you.
Yep, don't forget to unmute your microphones.
Hope so. Yes. So I will start
with
my part of the introduction, and then Peter will explain the more juicy technical details of this drinking water treatment plant. So I will start with telling you a bit about myself. I work as a project manager for the Energy Agency for Southeast Sweden. We are a public-owned company by 25 municipalities and 3 regions, and supporting them in the energy transition to a carbon dioxide-free energy system in the southeast of Sweden. And we work with energy efficiency, renewable energy, and with sustainable. So besides that, I'm also one of the ambassadors for this virtual island summit, and that's how actually I got in contact with wastewater education. And besides that, I'm also involved with Engineers Without Borders Sweden, where I'm actually now coordinating energy projects in developing countries for master thesis students for the universities in Sweden. And Number 4 of activities is actually there is the Eco Municipality Association in Sweden. Sweden in total is around 290 municipalities, and roughly half of them are members of the Eco Municipality Association. And they have agreements with Chile and Argentina, and as I speak Spanish, I am coordinating the projects there. So, next slide. I can probably do it myself, can I? Yes, I could. Great. So, for you who's not European, you might wonder what is an energy agency. Well, actually, it's a European Union initiative. And some 20 years ago, they decided that although there are national and European directives in the field of energy, it's very difficult to make an implementation on local level. So they created regional energy agencies. It started off as a project, then they became established within the regions, and now we are over 300. And whereof there are 15 energy agencies in Sweden. So the island cooperation started, well, actually well before 2008, but it was more formalized in projects 2008. And I'm talking about European islands in this case. And we work together in different fields, energy, transport, water, waste, governance, ICT, economy, etc. And we had made several projects during the last 12 years together. And just to give you a glimpse on where we are, the European islands, we are here. And we are quite a lot of islands. Nowadays, there is an international secretariat for islands in Brussels supporting Ireland to make an agenda for energy transition. So their wastewater and waste management is, of course, important topics for an island, especially islands heavily depending on tourism. So, as I mentioned in my introduction, I am also ambassador, one of 140 ambassadors, more or less, worldwide, who is supporting the Virtual Island Summit in 2020 at the beginning of September. It's a fantastic week of absolutely free webinars addressing island situations globally. And I can highly recommend to choose. The program will be set in the coming weeks. So keep an eye open on the website and you can find a lot of webinars that I'm sure will interest you a lot. And now to the island of Öland. Just to give you a background, what we were facing when we had to find new water resources on the island. The island main industry, if you can call it that, are tourists and cows. We are a winter population of about 25,000 inhabitants, but in summertime we grow up to 250,000 inhabitants. And we actually have more summer cottages than we have actually houses on the island. It's very, very popular. We are connected to the mainland with a bridge, a 7-kilometer long bridge. So it's very easy access to get to the island. But there are more inhabitants than just people on the island. We have more than 60,000 cows on the island. So dairy farmers are numerous on the island. It's quite an intense industry. And also the southern part, actually where this drinking water treatment plant is situated, is also a part of a World Heritage, which is we are very proud of to be selected as a World Heritage because we have a kind of nature that do not resemble anything in the northern countries. Just on the south of the island, you can find these very open plains and no forest on directly on top of the limestone that is actually the ground of the island. So I will get back to the, as you can see, we are facing some issues and challenges regarding drinking water when we grow up in a population to 250,000 in summertime. And do not forget the cows. As you know, humans normally, and the way we calculate in a way, uses between 30 and 40 liters of water every day. But a cow uses 70 liters of drinking water every day. So when we have more than 60,000 cows, it represented a big challenge for us. So in 2016, we had 2 years in a row with almost no snow at all in the winter, followed by a spring that normally we have quite a lot of rain in springtime. But during 2015 and 16, there was almost no rain at all in the springtime. So groundwater level were running very, very low on the island. And on the image to the left, you can see a normal spring on the island, what it looks like. But in 2016, it looked like the other picture, and you can see we had some serious drought situation on the island. And actually, the water was not enough to support the industry and the people. So the southern municipality, where the drinking water plant is situated, had to bring in trucks with water every day around the clock, just to keep up with the demand. And as you can expect, that was quite costly. So to find a more sustainable long-term solution was imminent, and they started looking for alternatives directly. One of these alternatives was to find new freshwater springs. So they got with the National, what you call it, Geology Association Agency, provided helicopters with TEM, as you know, that is Terra Electromagnetic Measuring, trying to locate new resources of water on the island. But they didn't find much, I'm afraid, due to the island is very narrow. I mean, it's 140 kilometers long, but it's only between 10 to 4 kilometers in width. So in width. So it's a very special island, and it's not easy to find new springs of water. So in the northern part of the island, there are two municipalities on the island, I can say that, one in the north and one in the south. They did not have any food industry, as we will talk about later. So they went for a more traditional desalination drinking water treatment plant in the north. And as we will talk about it also, we use the Baltic Sea is brackish water. So we managed to have very good quality of drinking water, and that sort of solved the situation in the northern part of the island, which also has most of the tourism. And another thing, when you're starting to look in the investment of a drinking water treatment plant, it is a huge investment for any municipality in Sweden. Although they receive directly 30% of the income tax from its population, still these kinds of investment have to have some sort of loan. So in Sweden, there is a finance institution called Kommun Invest. It's only for municipalities and regions, and they have developed a system called green bonds to finance sustainable infrastructure. You cannot use it for anything containing carbon or oil, so it has to be sustainable investments. And it has to have transition to a low carbon and climate resilient society. So that's where the municipality looked for financing this drinking water treatment plant. And it was granted. So they managed to start up and look for the challenges, because one of the biggest challenges, Peter,
So do you hear me
was
now?
that a large consumer of drinking water was nearby
me,
food
Tommy?
industry, right?
Yeah, so sorry. My name is Peter. I was the infrastructure project manager at Mörbylånga Municipality, who built this plant that I'm going to talk about. I was employed by the municipality until only 6 weeks ago. Then I switched to a consultant firm called Norconsult. So that's why, do you see my pointer too, my arrow? Yes, that's why there are double company names here. Next slide. There we go. Do you see the overview now?
Yes, we do.
Okay, no, I know it works now. Today I'm going through these different steps here in this presentation. Tommy has already mentioned some of things about the background of the water stress on Öland. I'll take some time to present the new drinking water plant, of course, the treatment train, a little special focus on reverse osmosis, how it works. I'll go to a very important part of commissioning a plant like this. It's the safety and monitoring, and an important part of that is the microbial barriers. I'll show a few results from the commissioning. I'll talk a little about why it could be a good idea to combine desalination with water reuse, and also about the future of water reuse, how we communicated this to the public and to media, and to politicians. And then I think there will be time for some questions too. You've already seen where Öland is. It's in the Baltic Sea, and I just noted here that the Baltic Sea is a brackish sea, which means the salinity is much lower than in the oceans. Mörbylånga Municipality is on the southern half of Öland, and as Tommy said, we had water stress, especially in 2016, when we had to transport drinking water in those tank trucks from the mainland. So what did we do to solve this water stress problem? The municipality very early in 2016 decided that we wanted to go for a desalination plant. And also very close to where we were planning to have this desalination plant, south of Mörbylånga, a small town. We also had this food processing plant that Tommy mentioned. It's one of the largest chicken meat producers in Sweden. And there was we were thinking, would it be possible to take back the water from this plant and make drinking water of it again? So anyway, this number one symbolizes how we get the brackish water into the drinking water plant. 9 wells, coastal wells, are drilled close to the Baltic Sea, and the water is led into the drinking water plant, number 2. And I'll go through the process in that plant in a moment. The plant can produce up to 4,000 cubic meters of drinking water per day. And then the drinking water is distributed to houses and businesses in the area, and also to this food processing plant, the chicken meat factory. And the plant consumes up to 25 to 30% of all the water that is produced in the municipality. So there was a strong wish to take that water back into the drinking water production again. The water from sewage from toilets and household wastewater is led to a municipal wastewater, conventional wastewater treatment plant. So it's only the process water from cleaning of machines and from the slaughterhouse is led to an industrial wastewater treatment plant that was built in 2011, 2012. And after treatment in the industrial treatment plant, the water is approved for discharge to the Baltic Sea. And the quality of the water is it's quite good. It's of course not drinkable. The content of microorganisms, of bacteria is very high. Some microorganisms anyway. But the municipality decided and also made some pilot tests where we saw that it's possible to make drinking water of this water again. So now it's the treated water from the industrial treatment plant is led into what we call the pre-treatment plant. And the only purpose with that pre-treatment plant is to treat the water to such an extent that we feel it's safe to lead it back to the drinking water plant again. And I need to say now that the process works all the way from the drinking water plant, number 1 and number 2, up to the pre-treatment plant, number 8. But we are still in a commissioning and fine-tuning phase of the project. So very short, you could say that the water quality from this new plant is very, very good, which means, for example, that the alkalinity is much lower than the water was from the other water plants that we have in the municipality. So the water has changed so much so that the process in the food processing plant needs to be adjusted to the new water. That's why we are fine-tuning step by step now in this process. But I'll show you some initial results from the pre-treatment plant regarding microorganisms, how effective it is in removing microorganisms. But you should know that the water from the pre-treatment plant is not yet led back to the water plant, the drinking water plant. It's still led out to the Baltic Sea again. Water production can vary from 600 to 4,000 cubic meters per day. And the plant treats a varying mix of brackish water from the wells and industrial water. And it will be used together with existing groundwater-based plants to ensure drinking water supply. And this is a flow chart of the treatment train a little more in detail. And I was not planning to go into every step in detail. You see that we have the food processing plant in the upper right corner here. They have some internal treatment of their processed water. But I wanted to highlight these yellow triangles that I put in this picture. They show what is called the microbial barriers. That is a very, very important part of water reuse. So I'll come back to that. And the numbers from 1 to 7, it shows the counting of the barriers from the food processing plant and all the way to distribution of drinking water. So you can see that there are up to 7 barriers. These 3 boxes show what happens in the pre-treatment plant. You have an ultrafiltration step and a UV light, and both these are very good at removing bacteria and viruses, and that's the main purpose that we have done. And after the pre-treatment plant, the water is going to be to enter the blending tanks in the drinking water treatment plant. And there it is blended with the water from the coastal wells. And then there is one more ultrafiltration step. This time, the main purpose of this step is to, you could say it's to prevent the reverse osmosis membranes from suspended solids. But it's also very good at removing microorganisms, of course. So that's the 4th barrier. Reverse osmosis is where the salinity is removed from the water, and that's also a very good step for removing microorganisms. And the water that comes out from the desalination, the reverse osmosis, that is so clean that even chemicals, essential chemicals that you want to have in the water, like minerals, are removed. So the water passes through a filter of limestone, a bed of limestone to get some mineralized again. And then after that, there is UV light for disinfection, and we also have the possibility for chlorination of the water if needed. So normally it's in standby mode, but we can. It's an option to use it if needed. So the desalination, I don't know if everyone has heard about reverse osmosis, but in principle, you use very high, you put the brackish water or the seawater under very high pressure, and you force the water molecules to pass through a very fine membrane. Not even the ions, sodium or chloride ions can pass through this membrane, the salt ions. So almost only water molecules passes through. And that requires, of course, pressure. And the brackish water that we use, you can see here that the pressure is much lower than if you were to desalinate seawater. And this is one of the reasons that we wanted to also use the industrial water, that the pressure needed is much lower than for seawater and for brackish water. So we expect to make some energy savings in this process. In reality, these membranes, they are spiral wound. They are put in pressure vessels that look like this. You would see these tubes or vessels in almost every reverse osmosis desalination plant. And you put the water under pressure in between. You see the membrane is large sheets of RO membranes are wound like this. And the water goes in and passes through the membrane, and it goes in this spiral into the pipe in the center of the pressure vessel. So that's the reverse osmosis. And the microbial barriers, I mentioned that we have 6 or 7 in action in Mörbylånga in both the pre-treatment plant and in the water plant. And the microbial barrier removes as a filter or inactivates, for example, ultraviolet light. They remove viruses, bacteria, and other microorganisms. And the removal capacity is measured in a logarithmic scale. For example, log 2 is 99%, log 3 is 99% reduction, and so on. And that is called the log removal value, the LRV. Each barrier in Mörbylånga, including the pre-treatment plant, has an LRV of somewhere around from 2 to 7, meaning 99 to 99.59% removal. And with 5 barriers running, I made this calculation without the barrier that is in the existing industrial plant. So this is only with 5 new barriers. The total LRV is at least 16 for viruses, 99.149% removal, and even more, I think about 24 for bacteria. So the removal is very, very good, and I always show this number when we have presentations in the plant, and people usually, someone said after a presentation, oh, it was very good to see all those nines. So it's important to know that the safety in this plant is really, really high. And the regulations in different countries require a log removal from 9.5 to LRV 14. We have no such regulations yet in Sweden, so we have been looking at other regulations in other countries. For example, the US. So a little more about the safety in this plant. First of all, we have a very well-defined and highly controlled source water from this food processing plant. We know exactly what chemicals they use. We know exactly how they clean their water. It's of course much more difficult to know what you get in the source water if you try to treat municipal mixed wastewater. So this is a little easier for us. There are several design principles, safety principles, from the World Health Organization and the US Environmental Protection Agency, for example. For example, you talk about fail-safe design. In this case, in our case, the division of the process into 2 different buildings. If 1 or even 2 microbial barriers are not working for example, in the pre-treatment plant, the drinking water plant will still produce drinking water. The safety is so high that at least 2 microbial barriers can be out of order, and it's still drinking water that comes out of the plant. Of course, we will stop the process if we know that only 1 microbial barrier is not working as expected. There are programmed automated shutdowns at certain alarm levels. The system is loosely coupled. The microbial barriers work independently of each other. That's one example. The redundancy is very high. For example, we try to always have 2 independent monitoring of 2 independent parameters for each microbial barrier. So if one is not working, we will always get an alarm from the other. And it's a multiple barrier approach. In our case, it's 7 separate microbial barriers, and we call it an excess of safety. So I think I'll move forward. Yes, here are I wanted to show some results from the pre-treatment plant, even if we're not reusing water yet. So we have made a lot of samples and analysis. And this is a special analysis of certain pathogenic microbes that we expected could be in this water. Yeah, this column it's in Swedish, but it means before the pre-treatment plant, and the next column is after the pre-treatment plant. And when it says negative here, we have not even found the microorganism in the incoming water. But there is one bacteria here, it's called Yersinia enterocolytica. Yeah, as we have a very high content in the incoming water. I think this is 100 millions of units per incoming liter. So it's very much, but you can see after the pre-treatment or even after the first step in the pre-treatment, the UV ultrafilter, because at that time we had not started the UV light. All of the content of this bacteria was removed, even in the first microbial barrier. So it's really, really effective. And then a few months ago in February, we had a new measurement, and you see again, we have this bacteria. I think this is 1 billion of units in 1 liter. And here, the biologist that helps us with the measurements, she even filtered 5 liters of water to see if she could find anything of this Yersinia, and the result was still negative. So it's really, really efficient. Something about the treatment cost. I wanted to find something to compare with, so I found this table from I think it's from Orange County Water District. It says a little about the treatment costs for different. This is advanced treatment with reverse osmosis of wastewater into drinking water. And the cost is US dollars per 1,000 gallons. It's an unusual unit for me, but I've tried to translate our figures to this unit. And here you can see brackish groundwater desalination, 2.76. And we are somewhere here at the lower end of these figures in Mörbylånga now. So we expect to get even lower when we start treating the used water. So why did we want to have this water reduced? Why didn't we set with only desalination? First of all, it was, I think we wanted to be sustainable. Fresh water is really valuable on our island. As Tommy told you, we have had periods of water stress, so we were not comfortable with sending 25 to 30% of all the fresh water that is produced in the municipalities to send it to the Baltic Sea again. That was one reason. And we also noted when we were doing pilot tests that the treatment rates are the same for desalination and water reuse. For example, we can use ultrafilters, reverse osmosis, and UV lights. And as I mentioned, the blended water will have lower salinity than the seawater that we use, so we hope there will be energy savings due to lower pressure. There is not as much salinity to remove in the reused water. So a little about the future of desalination and water reuse. Today there are more than 20,000 desalination plants in the world, but only a few water reuse plants. But the number is growing, and the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, they now include water reuse. I think it's very interesting. Goal number 6 is clean water and sanitation, and one of the targets is in that goal is by 2030 improve water quality by substantially increasing recycling and safe reuse globally. So this is something that is definitely coming more and more. But Mörbylånga drinking water plant is the first in Europe for water reuse, for potable water reuse. It could be the first plant in the world to combine desalination with water reuse. There are some different ways to reuse water. I don't know how much time is left, Dandra.
Yeah, you have 45 minutes. Yep, plenty of time. Plenty of time.
In total.
Yep.
In total. Plenty of time. Okay, so it's time to go through this illustration too. There are a lot of arrows in this illustration, but it's really simple when you look a little closer. In the upper left corner here, you have your water source. It could be surface water, or it could be groundwater, and these arrows show a conventional treatment of that water. You take the source water, the raw water, into your drinking water plant, and the community uses it. And then you clean the wastewater in a treatment plant, and then you feed it to a recipient, the treated water. That's the conventional way to do it. Yeah, but in water reuse, you take the water back into an advanced water treatment facility, AWTF, and you treat it to such an extent that you can reuse it in different ways. So the most common, this one is very common all over the world, I think, that you use it for technical purposes, non-potable reuse, for example, irrigation. Yeah, you could instead lead it back to your water source, for example, to infiltrate it again to the groundwater. That's indirect potable reuse, and I know Singapore does this, for example. And you could also do it in a more direct way, as we do in Mörbylånga. Take it from the pre-treatment plant, in our case, back to the drinking water plant, and you feed it back to the consumers. And you could even, if you treat it the level of treatment is very high in the AWTF, you could take it back directly to the distribution system. And I think there is a plant in Namibia that does it this way. A question, is water reuse a new phenomenon? Is it something we have recently invented? I think everyone in this forum knows the answer, that we have always been reusing water, but when we have presentations of the plant in the water plant, we often show this picture, so to get people thinking that, okay, we've always been doing this, so maybe it's not so very new to reuse water. Yeah, this could be a river, and to begin with, you have a first town treating water from the river to drink it, and then releasing it to the wastewater treatment plant and leading it back to the river. And there, a few kilometers downstream, you have the next city or the next town treating the water, discharging it to the river, and very often you will have city number C and even D and maybe E as well. So this is very common. It's called de facto reuse. It happens everywhere. So how did we communicate this to the public and to media? First of all, I wanted to point out that we have always been 100% open with our plans, what we plan to do. Since the first plans in 2016, we have said that we plan to use desalinated water and we plan to use reused water from this food processing plants. There has been several press releases, leaflet drops, information sessions, and response from politicians and from local public has been almost 100% positive. There are a few, I know there is a blog, for example, writing a little about this, but there have never been collective protests against this, no name lists or such things. And positive coverage in local and national media. And we also got royal inauguration with Sweden's Crown Princess Victoria. Here. And this is the Prince Felix of Luxembourg, since the membranes come from Luxembourg. We managed to get Prince Felix to be together with Princess Victoria to inaugurate the plant. So that helped to highlight the importance of this project. And the last point I have here, maybe it sounds obvious, but yeah, you will see on every photo from this plant, you will see the pressure vessels are shining. Everything is with high finish and shining. We want people to get the feeling that the plant is really clean and well operated and well taken care of. I think it's important in a plant like this too. This picture says we even want to make our residents proud of this new innovative water plant. So we have a lot of guided tours. And we had this royal inauguration. We received where we were awarded the Water Reuse Europe Innovation Prize 2019. And here, this is an article from the Global Water Intelligence magazine. And I told you that we think this is the first plant in Europe, maybe in the world, that combines desalination with water reuse. And we're also very proud to be the first plant ever that has been in the Swedish women's magazine, Svensk Damtidning, and that's of course because of the royals. So that was very much what I was going to show from this plant. Some conclusions is I would like to write here that we had commissioned the plant fully, but I have to say we have commissioned the first stage. It's the drinking water treatment plant. And we are still waiting to commission the complete water reuse. But we have commissioned part of it, and it will ensure the municipal drinking water supply is independent of rainfall in groundwater recharge. Yeah, we used direct potable reuse. It was selected to take advantage of the similar advanced treatment trains needed for desalination and water reuse. Blending the brackish seawater with raw water from the food processing plant will result in lower energy consumption, lower operating costs, and less freshwater discharge to the Baltic Sea. 6 duty and 1 standby microbial barriers provide an extensive safety regarding water quality risks. Proactive and transparent stakeholder engagement has produced positive political and local support for the project. Yes, and initial performance tests have shown the chemical and energy consumption and the water quality meet the contractual requirements and even regulations for water reuse. So thank you very much for listening. Are there questions now?
Thank you, Peter. If Tommy, you would like to turn your microphone, your webcam back on. There were a couple of questions that you might want to elaborate on, Tommy.
Well, we had some questions in the chat, and also regarding the cost of the plant compared to a regular desalination plant like the built in the north of the island. If I recall correctly, it was like 25% more expensive, the southern part. That's right, Peter?
Yes, I can see your answer, written answer. Yes, 12 million US dollar for our plant and 7.5 for the plant in the north. Our plant is can produce 4,000 cubic meters a day, and the plant in the north can produce 3,000. So there is a little difference in the production. What they can produce.
Then we had a question about energy use for reverse osmosis. Do you have any figure on that?
Yes, in our case, we use around 1.5 kilowatt hours per cubic meter treated water. I know not all use those units, but that is because we treat brackish water. Seawater with highest salinity uses much more energy, maybe 3 kilowatt hours per cubic meters. Yes, Tommy, that's it.
You can also add that we had no problem in attract the royal family of Sweden to make the inauguration of these 2 plants, actually, because they have a summer residence on the island. So they were close by. So they're quite keen to
yes,
make inaugurations of stuff on the island. Any more questions?
So, I do have one question. When do you think you will be fully operational? When do you think the drinking water plant will be receiving from both parts?
we were hoping that it would already be fully operational, but I think in a plant like this and reusing water, you really need to be very careful with the fine-tuning of the plant. So the plan is to do it after the summer now, after the vacation. We feel it's not a good idea to do it now when the operators are soon going for vacation. So in August or September or October, I hope we will begin introducing the reduced water into the drinking water plant.
I actually have a question.
But we are
okay, one at a time, folks. Go ahead, Tommy.
So, just a quick question to Peter. As I've seen, we have among the audience members of the Engineers Without Borders. Would it be possible to make a small-scale version of this drinking water treatment plant, or this is the size it has to be because it's so expensive? What do you think?
Yeah, I've read about small-scale water reuse plants, but I don't think they use Yeah, I've read about small-scale water reuse plants, but I don't think they use reverse osmosis. I think they treat the water in other ways. Yeah, as someone mentioned, the reverse osmosis requires a lot of energy. It's could be quite expensive. One reason you want to use reused water instead is that energy consumption is much lower. So, but I don't know the minimum production capacity of a plant with the reverse osmosis. Could be you need to use other techniques.
Yeah, I had a question.
On to
Yeah, the question would be is the main barrier for that energy production? If so, can it be powered with solar or wind in more remote locations?
Absolutely, that's a very good idea. I know some places with more sun than we have in Sweden that are building large solar parks to power their desalination plants. So that could absolutely be possible, for example, in Africa and other places.
Yeah, the high percentage.
I can add that.
No, go ahead, Tommy.
Just a comment. It has to be combined with energy storage. You can't only rely on wind power and solar power. You need energy storage like hydrogen or something like that.
Okay. The percentage removal of virus and bacteria was very impressive.
Yes, it is. It's even higher than we calculated. The bacteria removal, as I showed in the pre-treatment plant, is really.
Are there any more questions? While you're thinking about this, we pulled over the file share pod, which has some downloadable resources, including a copy of today's presentation. You can highlight them all and download them all in one fell swoop, or you can select each one and download individually. And if at the end you decide that you've left the room and you would like one of these, by all means, when you receive the recording link, you can log back into this room and download them then. So let me just put this one out of the way here. Thank you so much, Peter and Tommy. This is a fascinating presentation. One question that did come in by text: if you hadn't been forced to look at this option because of climate conditions, do you think you would still have proceeded with it?
I think so. We knew that we needed more water in the Mörbylånga area anyway. Yeah, maybe not yet, but I think sooner or later we need a desalination plant anyway.
Yeah.
But since everyone, I think this situation with the water stress and the tanks transporting water over the bridge 24/7, I think that made it much easier to build a plant like this with water rules. Everyone knew from the public to the politicians to media everyone knew that something had to be done.
Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for attending today. We are going to stop the recording here shortly. Just to reiterate what we put in the chat window, if you have a microphone and you would like to stick around for a little while after the event and have a one-on-one conversation with our presenters, by all means do. At this point, I am going to stop the recording. Remind you all to come back next week on June 22nd when our speaker will be Barman Sheikh from University of California, Irvine Davis, and he will be looking at a very similar topic of the use of recycled and reused water for agricultural purposes. Kind of goes hand in hand with the topic from today. So again, thank you so much, and come back again when we have